What is up, everybody? Welcome back here to the Quarters Podcast. We're on our summer scouting trip this summer. We did quarterbacks last week. Go check that out if you missed it. That was a lot of fun diving into it. We had a lot of fun in the quarterback class because it is a fun quarterback class. The running back class, it's been a week as we've been diving into these guys. It's a tough class to evaluate because there's a lot of ifs. There's a lot of let's see if he develops. There's a lot of what is his role going to be? I think last year in the 25 class, there's a lot more roles. We knew what these kids can do, and we're like, hey, yeah, we can see a role from the NFL. I would say the 26 class, it's not as defined roles. That's something we're going to have to play through as we kind of get into these guys. We've got 5 big profiles here, and then we'll go over some of our honorable mentions as we get through these guys. But we watched a ton of running backs. There's a ton more coming because this is a kind of not a down class, but it's a deep class. So we'll be getting to them as the summer goes to and progresses. So stick with us here as we're going into the running back class of the 2026 class. All right, we are diving in. Now, remember, these aren't necessarily rankings. We are just diving into the top-ish consensus 5 guys that we like, and then we're going to go into our honorable mentions as well. First up, Penn State running back Nicholas Singleton, a guy that we all wish would have came out last year, but he decided to go back. He got the bag from Franklin, who was at his doorstep right after that loss to Notre Dame, saying, hey, stay for us so we can go win a national title. Comes in at 6 foot 227, has put on some weight since he got into college. So as someone who watched Singleton when he came out, that is one thing that he has done. He's definitely put on some weight there. Last year in 2024, had a really good year, 1,000 yards rushing, 172 attempts, 12 touchdowns, had 41 catches, 375 yards, and 5 touchdowns. And I will say, again, one area he's improved is his receiving ability. Like, that's one thing that he's done a great job at because he didn't have shit, excuse my language, in high school. Like, when you watch the tape and you go through the numbers, it was pretty barren when you're going through his receiving numbers. So that's definitely improved there. Now, as far as what he did last year from a PFF standpoint, 79.3 offensive grade, 83.1 run grade, and in yards after contact per attempt, sitting at the 3.54 mark there. Christian, what do you see with Singleton in terms of him as a prospect? What are we looking for? I mean, some people have him as running back 1. I've heard a lot of prospect fatigue talk out there with Singleton because we've seen him for so long. Where are you at with him?
I mean, he reminds me a lot of TreVeyon Henderson. We've talked about this in our Discord a little bit, but there are a lot of people that are going to be lower on Singleton because his sophomore year, he was banged up, and we saw a lack of efficiency coming off a really big freshman year. Now, his freshman year wasn't as good as TreVeyon Henderson's, and I don't think he's really quite been as good as TreVeyon Henderson just yet. But this is kind of the same track where good freshman year, down sophomore year, bounce back junior year, but then explodes as a senior. And I think what we're going to see is the elite speed, the elite burst. I think we saw last year we have on here that, like, he doesn't always finish runs, and there are times where you wish he would just break one more tackle because he'd be in space, and that's where he does his damage. I think we saw a pretty significant improvement in that last year, and he had his largest attempt total and just his largest touch total last year. But it felt like as the year got better, or as the year got later, he was getting better. They were keeping him fresh throughout the year. He did experience a little bit of an injury early on in the year, and then I think we saw him come on down the stretch. So I think one thing with him, when we talk about the rest of this running back class, is he really does have 3 down upside. His work as a receiver has gotten so much better to the point that it's kind of in the same mold. I mentioned TreVeyon Henderson, but it reminds me of Travis Etienne, except Singleton can actually run routes downfield a little bit and be more than just a dump off specialist. So I really like Singleton. He's my 2 right now. Heading into the fall, I think we're going to see another big year from him, and they're going to keep him fresh. They've also got, we probably won't talk about Katron Allen, but they've also got Quinten Martin Jr., who apparently had a really good spring. And so this could be like a 3-back system at Penn State this year. So we might not get the counting stats, but I think we're going to see a lot of really good efficient metrics.
Yeah, I mean, his biggest thing, and a lot of the guys we're actually going to talk about, just very, very good track speed. And it's probably the theme of the class, I'd say. I do see a good amount of like throttle down and patience in the blocks, but then at the same time, and it's been improved, but we've also seen it's clear like the run's supposed to go to the 3 gap on the left side, and he's going there no matter what. And I think it really hurts some of the creativity, so he misses a little bit of the cutback lanes in that regard. My biggest, if you've watched for the last process, I think he's a good pass blocker, and I really love that. And especially if you have the 3 down upside, adding in the pass blocking solidifies that 3 down upside at the next level. So I think that's a big plus for him. Everything else, he's a great athlete with great speed and burst. Elusiveness should be better. So it could be a little bit tight, not enough wiggle in that regard. He does run through some arm tackles with good power, but I wouldn't say like breaking tackles is his biggest strong suit. Is what I probably like the biggest negative I have for him, along with a little bit of like just predetermining where he's going to go.
Do you think it's a vision issue for him?
I think, I just don't know if it's, I think it's maybe, it's weird because I almost want to say it's like him trusting the system.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Where we see the vision at different times, and then we've seen it really help out. I mean, you see it, his vision's probably the best in his punt returning. So like, I don't understand. It's clearly there.
Yeah.
It makes me think he's just so conditioned to like in practice every time I get 6 yards from this, so it's going to be there. It's like, but the cutback, you could have got 6 instead of the 2.
I do think the reason why I bring it up is because heading into his freshman year, his biggest problem was vision inside the tackles. And so he always just bounced it because he did it in high school. Like in high school, you watch the tape because he's faster than everybody else. He did improve. Like he has improved there. I actually thought his sophomore year, Christian brought it up, it was a down year because he was banged up, but he improved better in between the tackles that year. Like when you watch that tape, you're like, oh, wow. And similar kind of Travion, right? Like you mentioned Travion, like Travion improved that too the last couple of years. And yeah, the production numbers aren't going to be there just because it's a 3-headed monster. I think they're going to pass a little bit more. I think Aller has some rushing upside too. So like, but I don't think it really matters anymore based on what we saw Travion's capital being and those things. If they test well enough, he's going to be okay with the day 2. Of the guys in this group, he's one of the safest guys, I think. Like he's a safe floor guy. Like I think it would shock me not to see him go day 2. Like that would be one of those things where it's like, hey, he's the type of level of athlete. He's the type of guy, runner that can do this as long as he doesn't get injured. It's hard to imagine a guy not going that running back 2 kind of, or that day 2 as like a running back 2-3 guy. Like I could see him being there. I don't have him as 1. Do you guys have him as 1?
No, I would have him in contention for 2.
Okay.
I guess is the best way I can put it right now.
Yeah. But I don't have him falling very low either. Like if he doesn't have, like, he's one of these guys, like the stock exchange guys talked about this, but yeah, it just kind of what he said was, with a lot of these guys, you kind of know what they are. For him, you do. Like, I know what he's going to give you. I think he can give you 3 down capabilities. He could plug in an offense and he'd be very good. And I think he would have been a top back in this last class that we just saw too. I think he could have been a top 5 guy too. So he's right there. Anything else on Singleton?
I guess the only thing is I do worry a little bit about the elusiveness. I would like to see him be more creative in space because I think he's got the athleticism to do it. But like you talked about, Kevin, he's always been faster than everyone on the field. So he just tries to outrun them. And then if he can plow through them really quickly, his momentum's still forward. He doesn't like to go lateral all that much when he's in space. So not that it's like, that aspect of it reminds me of Chuba Hubbard in college. And we've seen Chuba Hubbard be a really efficient back at the NFL level now. It did impact his draft stock though. So I'm curious to see if he gets better in that area. I think, but that speaking back to Travion though, like that was similar to Travion sophomore and junior year. He wasn't as elusive. He was just trying to outrun everyone. So we'll see if Singleton can improve there this year.
Yeah. All right, let's get to another guy. Jeremiyah Love. So he's out here at Notre Dame running back. Heisman candidate-ish. I've been seeing some love out there for a Heisman, possibly for a running back. I don't think it's going to ever happen after we saw Ashton Genty, but I digress there. 6 foot, 212 pounds. When you're looking at what he's going to be, his 3rd year coming in 2025. Offensive grade, he had a phenomenal year last year. 91.1 offensive grade for Notre Dame, 91.8 run grade, 4.39 yards after contact per attempt. He had 1,100 yards in just 163 attempts, 17 touchdowns last year. As a pass catcher, showed he could do it, right? We'll get into that, what that means for him. But 28 catches, 237 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And And a lot of people, when you're thinking of like Love, they have him as the clear running back one of the class. Like they talked about him being the clear running back one of the class. Very first round. I think we did a mock this year. And of course, Randy gave him to the Cowboys in the first round. So we're seeing that mock draft capital go into that round one stuff. And from a rushing standpoint, the things that we pointed out that he can be, like explosive athlete. You saw it in the playoff when he ran for that, 90-something yard touchdown run that you had. Like he does have that explosiveness that you love to see there. Very good patience between the tackles. And he's a very good runner there. And to me, like contact balance. Patience, contact balance. He does that very well. Like, and it takes multiple guys to take him down. That's one of the reasons why you see his yards after contact per attempt being so high. And yeah, he's a big play guy. Like he definitely has that in that range. So that's his strengths. Weaknesses that we point out, but we'll get into receiving production. Yeah. Inconsistent vision at times. I think that it's interesting because he can do it really well. But it was funny, like against in the playoffs, it kind of shown out. And I don't know how banged up he was though. So I'm not sure how banged up he was in that range too, because he definitely took some beatings down the stretch there. And then footwork needs work that we pointed out here. Christian, I know you're a big Love guy, right? So not just like a Love guy, but also Love. But where are you at here with Jeremiyah Love in terms of him as a prospect?
Yeah, so I do the caveat here is I've had Jeremiyah Love as my RB1 in this class since I watched him when he was a recruit. So I can acknowledge that I might be bringing some bias to this. And to be quite honest, I don't have him as the clear RB1. I don't think that he's uncatchable in this class. I think he's a very, very talented back. And I do think that he will be a first round running back. I do. So we talked a little bit about the vision. It's interesting because there are times when between the tackles, he's as good as a guy like even Ashton Genty last year, where he has that patience, he finds the hole, but he manipulates second and third level defenders, and then he's able to explode for big plays. And then there are other times where he sits behind the line of scrimmage and he's kind of just looking at the entire line and doesn't really know what to do with it. And those are the types of runs that I think we need to see improved upon this year. Notre Dame traditionally is going to be better than their offensive line is going to be better than their opponent's defensive line. So there might not be a whole lot of opportunities to see this, but I do think that they have a shot to make the playoff again this year. So maybe we'll see that there. But yeah, man, the athleticism is crazy. The receiving is an interesting topic because I think, we said receiving production, it was fine last year. It's a lot of dump offs, and it's just we don't see an actual receiving back out of him. It's more of like what Josh Jacobs can be, or I mentioned pre-show, but he reminds me a little bit of Jonathan Taylor as a prospect, which scares me because I didn't really like Jonathan Taylor as a prospect. I was wrong because he's been phenomenal, but he is still exactly who he was in college. I worry that that's the case with Love, where we might get 25, 30 catches out of him as he gets to the NFL. And then you're just really relying on touchdown production for him to be an impact back. But you look at what he provided in Notre Dame last year. I think I saw a PFF stat where he had the second highest wins added behind Ashton Genty in college football last year. So this kid is really good. I'm excited to see his development and his growth and see if he can become more of a receiver because I think that unlocks like a top 20 level draft selection.
And I think it can unlock this offense now that you have another new quarterback in the system, possibly not just focused on a lot of QB power and big moments as well, maybe allowing him to get more of the work and be more of a weapon in the receiving game. I mean, he's another track athlete. And like you said, the biggest thing with his patience that I liked was, like you said, his ability to freeze defenders at the second level, or even at the line of scrimmage. I saw a couple times a 3-tech kind of stand up or blow up the play and him be able to freeze him. He's not going to get 20 yards out of the play, but he got 4 instead of 0. And it's a very important trade at the next level. I did think the vision seemed to be a little bit better and more of like a standard kind of gap or more of a zone scheme. Anytime there's more like motion, it seemed to kind of cloud the vision for him and make him almost overread. It's like the quarterback holding the ball for 4 seconds for some reason. It's like, just get rid of it. Just go. So that was like the worst thing with it, but the best. I do think he plays he's very lucid, but he does play with a lot of like aggression and contact balance. I do worry, we saw it last year, it kind of wore him down near the end of it. He did still play well at the end, but you're going to play more games in the NFL, so we need you to not be wearing down at the end. So maybe a little bit of frame issues there, but 6 foot 212, we could probably play it actually like 205, 200. So if we can get more up to the 212, I think we could get a little bit better with that and a little bit more usage of the pass game, because the open field stuff is great. And he's lined up out there at times too for screens. It's just, you need to see more creativity, some more big plays, because that's what a back like this is supposed to give you, is the big plays along with everything else. And then really just kind of broke out quick. I think that shows that there's more to grow, which is a good thing. Obviously, it's just his third year in college, so we'll see with that. Again, with the frame thing, I'm sorry, I'm the lineman. Below average pass blocker.
Yeah,
it's something you have to improve. Again, like you said, this line's going to be better than everyone he's probably facing on the defensive side, but you should be able to show some decent dominance at that level then, if that's going to be the thing. And then sometimes I think the ball carrying is a little weird, so that could cause some more problems with turnovers later.
That's fair.
You brought up the point. I become a pass blocking snob like Randy, because that was, to me, that was the big one. I think he's gonna have to do that more this year with CJ Carr under center, because I think they got away with it last year. Riley Leonard, a lot of runs, a lot of QB runs, a lot of design runs, those type of things. CJ this year, I mean, CJ can scoot a little bit, but it's not like Riley could do. So you're probably going to have to see a little bit better pass blocking on his end. I will say this though, I'm really cautiously optimistic about this offense. I think it's going to be better with Carr under center. I know that might be a hot take, but CJ's a damn good player. And he was actually rated very high. I had him very high last year in my rankings, higher than most in terms of what he can do, because he's a very cerebral guy. He's a traitor because he went to Notre Dame, but I get it. So like I think overall you're gonna see this offense better, which I think is gonna open things up for Love, because they saw a lot of 8-man boxes, 9-man boxes last year because they were running the ball pretty much the entire time, and I do think that you're gonna see Love kind of benefit from that. Very solid prospect. I've talked about my things with him. I definitely want to see him be able to have that durability, be able to carry the volume, which I don't think he's going to get this year either. So I think it's one of those things where, do we worry about the volume again, or has he done enough? And I think he's done enough. Like, we've seen the production there, so you should be okay with him there. But I don't have a clear running back one in this class yet. Like, I just don't. I don't have that in terms of these guys. Like, they're all in the same tier. Christian?
That's fair. I just want to mention, so when Love was a recruit, he was 190 pounds. Last year he played at 206. Now he's listed at 212. So I think we are seeing the growth as far as like adding to his frame. And that was always there, but I still think he's like, sometimes he plays like 190 pounds still.
Yeah.
And so you want to see him, be now when he's running the ball, he doesn't. Like, he runs with incredible ferocity and contact balance and things like that. But when it comes to the receiving game, I do think that the pass blocking and things like that could be improved this year with an extra 6 pounds. And who knows, by the time we get to the combine, kid could be sitting at 220, and then we're talking about him as a different type of back here.
Yeah. Did you guys mention anything, see anything in the film about like maybe ball security at all? Are you worried about that?
That's what I brought. I don't know if it's a real concern yet, I guess, but that's why I brought up like
this carry.
He just carries it weird at times.
Yeah.
Like the technique of it, like it's a little bit,
because he had no fumbles this year or last year.
No,
but it's weird, isn't it? Like, there's like this, like, what are you doing with that ball, sir?
It's that classic, me growing up, my coach, you're carrying it like it's a loaf of bread, which made no sense to me ever. But like, you're all the way out away from your body at times, especially when he's trying to make moves, which probably never then.
Am I crazy? Did Alvin Kamara do that as a prospect too?
Possibly. It's been a while.
It's been a fat minute. The only reason I asked that is because that was something that he has always carried the ball like that, and that's it's certainly concerning. But if it's not hurting him yet, then maybe it'll only hurt him after he gets drafted. But we're full-fledged ahead towards the draft. What happens after doesn't matter.
Yeah. No, I know. little things. I think at a certain point to get to, like, okay, who are these guys? I think that's something that I noticed there. And again, I go back to that depth chart. Aeneas Williams is really good. Jadarian Price is good. Like, it's going to be interesting to see how the volume gets shaken out there. But overall, like, yeah, I mean, a lot of people, like you said, like they have Jonathan Taylor vibes. They have like 3 down vibes. They have these stuff. And that could definitely be it. He could be the running back one of the class. I do think he's in that top tier, right? So it'll be interesting to see how that tier shapes out. All right, let's talk about another guy who's going kind of under the radar. I think for some, if you listen to us or we've talked about him for a while, but Jonah Coleman, he was the former Arizona running back. He transferred last year to Washington. Interesting weight and height here. 5'9", 229. He's looking like me. When you're thinking of like what he had, but not looking like me in any way in terms of muscle mass. But massive guy in terms of his weight. Looks really good there. Shorter, stockier guy. Last year at Washington, his first year there, he came over with Jedd Fisch, his coach. 1,000 yards rushing, 193 attempts, 10 touchdowns. Receiving standpoint, 23 receptions, 177 yards. They were underrated offense last year. I do think the offensive line was bad. Like, so when you go in through offensive line rankings in the Big Ten, they were dead last. And then when you go through just in the college football, they were probably ranked, if I had the numbers in front of me, lower 90s. Like, they were bad. This offensive line was really bad. But he was still able to put an 87.2 run grade, 86.3 offensive grade, yards after contact per attempt, and above 4 as well. And I like Jonah Coleman a lot. Like, when you go through his tape and you kind of diving into him, he's a downhill, plant his foot, gonna get in your ass type runner. And I'm an old school guy like that. Like, he does not win any wasted movement. Tackle breaking guy, physical. And I don't know, these guys, when we talk about running backs, for me, contact balance is like my favorite thing. I love watching these guys have that contact balance. He checks the box. If there's a giant box with a giant check mark, this kid has that contact balance there. Soft hands too, I think for a running back. But production hasn't been there, right? So we are talking about there. Pass blocking, me and Randy are going to love pass blocking for this kid because he's got that dog in him. So like the thing with him is he's not going to let anybody touch this quarterback. He has that good elusiveness, probably in the intermediate range, 0 to 10 yards, 0 to 15 yards. I think he does well there. The one thing that probably holds Jonah Coleman back as being like a top tier prospect, depending on, what you're looking for in a running back, he doesn't have that elite breakaway speed type guy. Like, he's not like, he can do it in the intermediate. I think he can make a lot of guys miss, but that elite speed is where you kind of worry about him a little bit. But again, you don't need elite long speed in NFL to be successful running back. We've seen plenty of guys be successful there, but then that comes with another bunch of different question marks. All right, where did he go? What's his landing spot? So that's where you get concerned about a ceiling type play for this guy. But Randy, what's your opinion on Jonah Coleman? Where are you at with him?
Yeah, I mean, the classic bowling ball, fire hydrant, U-Haul truck, whatever you want to say. He's fun to watch. Definitely a little bit more throwbacky in that regard. My biggest takeaway was almost surprising, was kind of the word I did, and that was mainly for his burst to the second level, the little bit of wiggle, evasiveness, receiving ability, at least hands-wise. Obviously the route tree is never going to be there, and you're not going to rely on it, but he's not going to make mistakes. It's not, Christian brother Jonathan Taylor. We were scouting him. His major thing with that for both of us was, he can catch dump offs, but it looks like, I'm at these peewee flag football games and the kid's catching it. You're like, oh, God dang it. I got it, guy. I got it. It's like, no, we need you to actually be a pass catcher. And we see that. And, I do think the vision it's a struggle, but I did see some good stuff in more of the zone concepts with patience. And I think that incorporates to the burst. And when you have a decent enough burst to the second level like he does, and this frame and the ability to break tackles with power and elusiveness at times, the acceleration can be there. And then obviously you're not going to have that next gear for 80-yard runs, but you don't need that from every running back. Obviously you'd love that, but it's not the skill set of everyone. And again, so here's the issue with pass blocking. When you're good enough, now we're going to get into technique, which is not what we do for a lot of running backs. And it is what he has to improve for pass blocking for me. It's just inconsistent. You see the drop eyes and just a very classic running back thing where they're just going to drop their eyes and hit you with their shoulder. And it works for him 100%. But we'll see. As more develops in the Big Ten, I think you need a little bit more of that. And then more of like the twist and blitz packages can get him at times, but great things elsewhere. Obviously, he's got the intensity you need, and he is willing to protect his quarterback at all costs. Just like Kevin said, I love it. But again, once you're good enough, now I'm going to actually look at technique. So, but I'd say he's competitive with the best from last year's class. Obviously, a couple of them have some special place in my heart if you've heard anything about it. But again, a lot of really surprising things. Even like the footwork, I thought was pretty like subtle at times and pretty good. But yeah, there's a lot of. I mean, there's not elite agility out of him, so it's going to be definitely a scheme dependent guy at the next level, but a guy that I think every team should love.
Yeah, he reminds me of Javonte Williams going into his final year at North Carolina. In that, like, and that might sound bad if you follow Javonte Williams' NFL career, but pre-knee injury, we were talking about Javonte Williams is clearly going to take over and be one of the top 12 backs in the NFL, and so I think we have that type of upside with Jonah. I do think, I actually, Javonte was probably more complete as far as contact balance and like elusiveness and space blend, but he also went towards the being a bulldozer, being a U-Haul truck, whatever you want to call it. That's what he preferred, and that's what Jonah Coleman prefers. I think this guy like seeks out contact, which can be good. It can also lead to injuries. He's been able to withstand a lot of big hits, which the Washington offensive line made him face pretty regularly. Like it sucked. And I think that's where, I have hangups on his vision, but it's tough because there were times where he would get the ball and he was looking at defenders and not his offensive line. And so it was really tough to find holes to run through when, there's nothing to do in front of you. So, but I do think there are times where like all of these backs, it's like they're coached to go through a gap. They really want to go through that gap no matter what. And that, I mean, we talked about it with Jeremiyah Love a little bit, but Nicholas Singleton specifically. Jonah Coleman had a few moments last year where I was like, man, there's a very clear cutback here. And it's kind of frustrating that you don't have the instincts to do it yet, or you don't have the confidence to do it yet. I think what we'll see this year is a little more confidence. He was in the same scheme last year, so I can't even like attribute it to that he followed his coach from Arizona to Washington. So I think we're going to see some growth there this year, and I think we'll get just a similar efficiency to what we saw in 2023, because last year was technically kind of a down year. Like he had more volume, yes, but like when you're talking about being efficient, I had Jonah Coleman as my RB2 in this class back in after the 2023 season. So He's dropped a little bit for me, but really good player.
When you go through the numbers too, so I was going through some of the numbers when I was diving in his profile. Like when you go in through yards after contact per attempt, missed tackle force, and then 10 plus explosive runs, here are the guys that he's kind of falls in like the top 7 category with: Ashton Jeanty, Caleb Johnson, Amari and Hampton. Like he's right there with those guys who we just saw go in the first 2 rounds, or excuse me, the first 2 days of the draft, right? That's what we want if you're looking at it. So like just from that, like the efficiency metrics and the things that you like to see, he does a pretty damn good job from that. And his elusive rating is 153.4. That's that for him. And with what you're looking at, like when you're thinking of who was the top 4, if you asked, it's always funny when I see this kid, because I remember Corey Kiner. I liked Corey Kiner, but just never.
Christian hated Corey Kiner, but not because of actual game tape.
Yeah,
college football game made him hate that guy.
Well, good. I'm glad.
But it's the same. It's exactly the same thing. I completely agree.
Yeah. So when you're looking at him, like when you go through elusive rating, I mean, he's right there. Genty's over 200, which is crazy. But there's Corey, there's Jonah, there's Caleb John. He's ahead of Caleb Johnson. He's ahead of Cam Scatterbo. He's ahead of Amari Hampton. So like he has that. But yeah, you'll make me laugh with that comment when he's like, he looked for defenders. As soon as this dude touches the football, he's like, all right, who am I going to hit? And if you watch his tape, it's so funny at the end of runs, like, because he could go like another 2 yards and just fall. But that dude is looking for a safety just to kill. And it's like, that's not great. Like, I love that, but all at the same time, like, don't do that at the NFL level. But I love watching it. I think that's why I kind of gravitated towards him and his film, because like I was like, this kid just loves to run. That's how he's ran since high school. Like that's how he ran when you were looking at it in Arizona. And I have a soft place in my heart for Jonah Coleman because he's out here from California. And when he was a 3-star kid too, like he's really battled his way up to that level. So he's a fun guy to watch. I think that offense is going to be better. We didn't really talk about Washington's offense. They did improve their offensive line this year. They have Damon Williams starting, which might take away a little bit of the rushing from him. But I do think they're going to need to protect him, so they can't just run Damon Williams. He's 5'11", 180 pounds. So Jonah's going to be that guy for them moving forward. All right, let's talk about interesting prospect that gets hated on a little bit. So we'll see what these guys stand with. Darius Taylor, running back out of Minnesota. When you look at what he's done the last 2 years, so he is a true junior. So this is his 3rd year. For his freshman year, a little banged up, only played in 6 games, had 799 yards and 5 touchdowns. Last year, 12 games, 205 attempts, 986 yards, and 10 touchdowns. And he also added some to the receiving game, 54 receptions, 350 yards, and 2 touchdowns. For context, for Minnesota last year, Darius Taylor was their team. There was not really anything else going on at the Minnesota Gophers. When you watch their tape, you can tell that every team knew they had to try to stop Darius Taylor. And if they did, they were going to win. But overall, 82.5 offensive grade. Run grade is 83.0. Yards after contact, just under 4 at 3.91. When you're watching him play, it's a Jekyll and Hyde type tape. If you don't like him, you're going to find plenty of things to criticize him for. But if you like him, you're like, oh, I can really elevate the things that he does well and really like him a lot. I'm probably the highest on Darius Taylor of the group, I'd imagine. But the one thing that really stands out to me, and which I like, which I know these guys don't necessarily like too much, I actually don't mind his vision in between the tackles. I don't think it's necessarily a terrible thing. But I do think that he has a strong lower body that he kind of gets away with some stuff, like because he has great contact balance. So his strong lower body allows him to do that. And the thing that really, and I'm glad we put it on the graphic here, but his footwork is elite. Like, so I think that he's technically sound. So that's the thing with Taylor. Like, he's a very technically sound running back. And I like what he can do there. I think he's a natural pass catcher. I think he can be a 3-down guy. And these guys know, or Randy will find out soon. Like, for me, I really elevate those kids that I think can be 3-down guys. Like, because I think from a fantasy perspective too, I'm like, hey, like if they can be on the field a lot, you're going to score a lot of points. So I do gravitate towards those guys. I think Taylor can be that, but I do understand the concerns, right? I think there's efficiency questions, the vision and the long speed. Like I get that stuff. Like I understand it from that perspective. Christian, where are you at with Darius? Because I know you don't like Darius very much. So I'd like to start with you first.
That's not necessarily super true. Like he's top 5 back for me. It's just my thing with Darius is I think he does a lot of things really well. And I think the footwork is elite. So I think technically he's really, really good. I also just see a lot of average on the film. So like I just don't know what to do with it because we've talked about 4 guys already, right? And we can point to, okay, Jeremiyah Love, Nicholas Singleton, speed guys, and Jeremiyah Love, contact balance. Jonah Coleman, contact balance. Darius Taylor, like the footwork's good, but I just don't know what the upside is. I also am a little concerned about how now, yes, the whole Minnesota offense ran through him. And so teams were really honed in on stopping him, but the efficiency came way down. And so I want to see that come back up, maybe not necessarily to almost 6 yards per attempt, but if he's going to get another 200 carries this year, I'd like to see him up over 5 yards per attempt. I don't know, man. I worry about the athleticism a little bit. He's not going to be the fastest guy. I think he's probably in the 4.5s if I had to guess as far as 40 time goes. So I don't know. This is a tough eval. I was even just looking for like a good player comp, and I can't find one. I don't necessarily know that we see backs like this too often.
I have one for you. So there's not a player comp, but he worries me. This worries me. Remember how we like Zach Evans?
Yeah.
Like I get worried because he's not as explosive as Zach Evans. Like I think Zach Evans had that level of explosiveness. But like the one thing when I was going through like the film and I was going through like the stuff, I just kept remembering Zach Evans, and I'm like, he could have been really. I mean, Zach had some flashes there. That's what worries me about Darius Taylor. Do I have my Zach Evans blinders on again? Where I'm like, I see this kid, and everything you're mentioning is 100% fact and it's true. And I think the part is what part of the game does he elevate? And then I go back to it like I don't know, but he's good. I know he's good. I know he's footwork, and I know he can run. But is that going to get the draft capital we want? I think that's the question.
Yeah, good.
It's a weird comp. But I understand
another guy that I was thinking about though, and I'm afraid like he reminds me a bit of Eric Gray, where like man, Eric Gray was good at a lot of things, but he just wasn't great at anything. And then he hasn't been able to play at the NFL level. But has he not been able to play at the NFL level because he hasn't been given snaps? Yeah, I don't know. And maybe that's a bad comp. I'm telling you, this kid is hard to comp for because we don't really see running backs like this. Sorry, Randy, go ahead.
No, you're fine. I really, this is going to be tough only because I feel like I'm just going to be parroting a lot of this because it's just great contact balance, elite footwork, natural pass catcher that I think he's a little bit better in that regard than Coleman, but we also just got to see it twice as much. So is it actually better, or do we just have more ability to watch it? So that's a little bit of a misguide for me. A very north and south runner. This we've said it a few times now, but this is probably the epitome of this is the hole where the run's supposed to go. It's going there. I do not care. It's going there. And obviously they have some runs and scheme space in this offense that have cutbacks, and his short area burst and quickness really helps there. But again, that's why vision here is one of our lessers, because he is just going to run right through the hole and hope it works. And, you know, he always runs the way it was kind of weird because he's trying to find like lower angles, but when he's going through the tackles, like at the line of scrimmage, he's sometimes too tall. But then when he's at the second level, he's getting the body lead and the dips, kind of like he's shooting as a wrestler. So it's really weird to watch. I just don't love it. I will say, pretty good pass blocker, technique, willingness to make it. We've seen him on the field all the time to be a true workhorse and be able to, be fine with it. So that's a good thing to see. It's just really weird. I kind of agree with Christian where you like the really good stuff, but I'm just not seeing those things add up to him just standing out more than just the only guy in a team. And that can lead to a phenomenal college player like Zach Evans that just does not do anything at the next level. And I think that's what we'll get because he doesn't do the things that he's great at. All the other running backs at the next level are going to be good at, and they have the other stuff. So that's where he's going to really get shortchanged. But he is a third-year junior, has showed improvement. We just, like Christian said, if we can get more consistency and we can get over that 5 yards back to, 5.6 or so, the freshman, like if we can get back to that, I think we're seeing a lot better version of Darius Taylor and somebody that deserves to be in contention for day 2 at that point. But as of right now, he's just a day 3 running back and probably a backup for me.
You and Kevin are going to have beef.
I don't know if it's beef or not. I think for me, I just need to go back and I watched him again. I like him, but maybe it's just too high preseason. Maybe that's what it is. I do think from a running back standpoint, maybe like when you go watch his freshman tape, there's a little bit of a different runner.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's more explosive his freshman year. So I don't know what happened between there because like last year was fine, but I did see explosiveness. And you saw that 6 games, almost 800 yards. And I know that a couple of those games were against some, there was some less based programs on that early stretch. But I do think that like he is a very, very solid runner. But I do get vibes where I get burned by guys like this a lot. So that's also me being cognitive, my misses in the last couple of years. Like, okay, well, if I missed on this kid, why is that? And I do think the best point that was made, Randy had some good points too. But I think Christian's point too was like, what is that one skill he elevates himself to? And it's like, if you can't point that out, I think that's a problem at this point of the process. Now, doesn't mean he can't get better, but maybe that's the one area I need to go back and look and say, okay, what's something he does? But I do think footwork is his elite ability. But like Randy pointed out, a lot of people in the NFL have elite footwork. That's part of it. So, all right, Randy, sorry. I didn't mean to throw you under the bus there. All right, let's go to, we're going to go to one last guy profile that Christian wanted to profile, and then we'll get into kind of some of our other guys here. Quinten Joyner. So if you guys don't know who Quinten Joyner was, and I say Christian, but I do it in jest. I liked Quinten Joyner a lot when he was in high school, coming out of high school, going to USC. So he was at USC. Then USC lost a bunch of people this year in the portal, and Quinten Joyner went to Texas Tech. They got that oil money out there. They spent up. They got him to come out there. And when you're looking at him as a profile in terms of what he is, he's a very solid back, 5'11", 205 pounds. last year at USC, minimal opportunities. And I've talked about USC's offense. I don't know what Riley's doing out there because they were running the football a ton last year. Woody Marks, Joyner, all these guys, they were averaging, 5.3 yards per carry. He was averaging 7.6. He had 63 attempts, 478 yards and basically 3 touchdowns. I mean, every time he got the football, he was going. Like, you saw him get 5, 6, 7 yards. They just went away from him, right? So I think of the guys in this group with an incomplete profile, it's Joyner, but it's not because of Joyner. It's not because of Joyner. It's because whatever the hell Lincoln Riley's doing at USC was just not running the football and not kind of elevating his team that way. When you're looking at his offensive grade on that limited sample size, 80.5. Run grade was 90.0 though. So, I mean, there is something to say. Yes, 63 attempts, but did have a 90.0 run grade, 4.5 yards after contact per attempt. Pretty good there. So when you're looking at it just from that perspective, like, you can tell he's got something. When you turn on the tape, elite athleticism. He does have some powerful runs. It's kind of like Jonah Coleman light a little bit. Like, he's not as big and strong, but he definitely doesn't mind having contact. He does the same thing. He seeks it out. And he's got smooth feet in traffic. So he does have that. You see that athleticism there. Probably the biggest things, when you're talking about what, hasn't he shown? The in terms of production, hasn't seen that. We're going to see it this year. He should be the running back 1 at Texas Tech. So he's going to get the attempts. No receiving profile. Really didn't have that in high school either. So that's the one thing to note. And then just got to see more out of him. But Christian, I know you came in hot in the Discord talking about Joyner. And I messed around a little bit, but I do like Joyner overall. But what are you thinking about him?
I mean, he's a top 3 back for me right now. It's based on projection. It's based on, some of what we saw last year. I mean, a 90.0 run grade. I didn't realize that was the case until we started talking on the Discord. I was like, man, maybe I'm crazy. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm looking at it wrong. And then I went over to PFF and it's like, yeah, he's sitting ahead of Omarion Hampton. Now, from a volume perspective, it's just not there. But to get 478 yards. Now, we just talked about Darius Taylor and the level of competition that he was facing. Joyner did get quite a few of those carries against inferior competition. So I think what we'll need to see is, can he sustain that? He's going now from the Big 10 to the Big 12, so I think he's actually going to get a lighter opportunity, and this Texas Tech offense should be pretty good. But man, his feet, just, there are times where like he's in a phone booth with a guy in space and he could run through them pretty easily, but he chooses to, evade and use his hips and use his eyes, and he shakes guys like it's nothing. And I think it's really impressive. I don't, I guess I'm a little worried about the receiving. I joked, he has a one-handed catch, I believe, against Notre Dame last year. And I was like, oh, he can catch the ball then. It's fine. But I am slightly concerned about his receiving profile because, Kevin, you liked him as a recruit. I didn't. I really just didn't. I wasn't sure if what he did would translate to the college football level. It has, in my opinion. I think he's in for a big year, but I'll be the highest person on Quinten Joyner, I think, in the world. So if you guys are out there listening, I would advise just throw his highlight tape on and just see what he's all about. I think he's one of those guys that's super, super under the radar right now.
Yeah, you could throw it out any time. It'll take you 8 minutes because that's all of his touches, at most 8 minutes. I actually really like him, but
it probably isn't.
It's probably 3 minutes, guys. Holy, it feels like we're talking about, that upside freshman that got in the last 3 games, so he didn't blow his red shirt. It's what really concerns me about this, because, there's just not enough to say anything, in my opinion. Everything's there that you guys have said, all the good and the bad, but that's because there's just not enough, so you can see everything, but nothing's actually defined yet. Because Christian put up, in the phone booth, seen some great things. I also saw some not great things at times, but I also saw the fantastic things. So it's a weird thing. He definitely wants to just run through people. Elite athlete, only wants to run with power, and has good feet and good bursts. Really can hit the hole and just dominate. There was a couple stretch runs. I saw him kind of hesitate at that, though. So it's a little weird. Again, you could watch every run so quickly. It's just so tough. And, Christian started that off with, this is all projection. And I wanted to interrupt, but I didn't because I'm trying to be nicer. No shit. It has to be all projection. There is nothing else to say. So that's
fair.
That's really why it's just a hard eval for me because, again, you're both completely right on everything you said, but that's the thing. Everything is right. So we talked about with Taylor not knowing what he is for that next level, not knowing what he's great at. We don't know anything about Quinten Joyner yet, except, again, like we joked about early with Christian saying the one-handed catch and a great. You're going to see out there, I'm sure, that somebody is saying he's one of the best ball trackers in the class because he has one-handed catch downfield. It's just one of his 13 catches in his career. And it's not, I don't care. I just don't yet. And I really hope, and there's no reason they didn't run the ball that much. That's crazy. I hope he gets all the opportunity he can this year. I hope he gets 200 plus touches and we really see all this fleshed out. And I think he could be in contention for one of the best running backs in this class if we see that out. But does he come out with 1 year tape like that?
That's my main question. But also when you have a class that looks like this, I think it's probably smart to. And now the 2027 running back class on paper doesn't. It's
not
also,
yet. We don't know.
Yeah,
yet.
but we probably will see some of that.
Is that grade he's getting back? The grade doesn't say, well, every running back is a day 2 grade. It says you're day 2, you're day 3. And really it's go back to school if you're not day 2. So it's just weird for
especially at running back, because Texas Tech is going to be able to pay him. So if he's not getting a high day 2 grade, then he's probably not declaring. And 1 year of, I think you can combine. No, you can't even combine his first 2 years and say that's 1 year of film because he still is under 100 attempts. So I think we're probably going to see him go back to school, but it's just a name I wanted to put on people's radars because we have seen guys that are like, okay, he just ran for 1,400 yards with volume here. He's declaring. And so, and I think that he does have that upside, if only because he probably Love and Singleton are super athletic, but Joyner's right there with them. I think from a relative athletics score perspective, he's going to be over 9, which is what we're looking for.
Yeah. Didn't I see he ran like an 11 or sub 1100 meters? So he's like a track athlete like them.
Yeah. And in high school too, just so people know, he did get volume in high school. When you're looking at what he did, he played in 6A ball, which is good in 2022. 196 carries, almost 1,800 yards rushing and 25 touchdowns. So that, he definitely did get some volume at least there. And as a junior, he was the MVP of Texas 5A. So he came, when you're looking at, so for those of you that don't know, if you're looking at Texas football, 6A, 5A is really what you want. Those are the guys that are just performers. And if they perform well there, that's one of the reasons why I really liked him. In Texas 5A, he rushed for 2,500 yards and 200 carries and 31 touchdowns. So we've seen the production being there. Now, the one thing, though, he has a career total of 18 catches. So that's the receiving side. That's going to be the thing that we have to get into is it just doesn't have a lot of catches. And that doesn't mean anything. He could be Judkins, right? The one thing that I would say too, about the tape, and then we'll move on. We talked a lot about Joyner. I don't know what's going on. The tape for me is, it does look like he needs to put on 10 pounds, 15. When I watch him run and I'm watching that, I'm like, okay, this kid's got to put on some more weight because I do think strength-wise he's got to get there. And I think that will that hurt his athleticism? I think that's always the question with these guys, but I would like to see him put some more weight on. That's probably my biggest concern. All right, Let's dive over to some of our honorable mentions here as we get through it. And we have a bunch of guys on the list. We'll talk about these guys too as it goes. But Jaydn Ott, Oklahoma running back. He transferred from Cal. I'll tell you this, Jaydn was a top 3 guy last year, probably. Like, he was very, very good, but he had a high ankle sprain and knocked him out for the year, essentially. Makhi Hughes, he's a Tulane running back. He's transferring over to Oregon. Tre'Vonus Wisner, he's at Texas. He's probably the starter there. Little CJ Baxter is also eligible to come out this year, but he tore his ACL and PCL, I believe it was PCL. So he's coming back, but I don't know in terms of where he's going to be. Bryson Washington out of Baylor as well. Some other guys that we put on our list that didn't get the screen here. Jamal Haynes, Jaheim White, Le'Veon Moss, and Mark Fletcher from Miami. The board is yours, Randy. Where you want to go here? What guy do you want to talk about?
I'll just go Jaydn Ott just because he was one of, I mean, you alluded to it. He was one of my favorite backs last year. Obviously, he wasn't going to be the top 2, but I thought he'd be contention. I think we're in the same boat this year. I think we see all you really need to see with burst and acceleration, good vision and patience, great contact balance, can get you to that past the second level, can make the big plays, shows 3-down capability, good footwork. I think he runs with a lot of toughness. I do think he runs too high, and I think that contributes to injuries like the high ankle sprain because he's just leaving himself open to some bigger shots. Pass protection isn't great yet. I don't think he's ever really been asked to do it that much, but obviously you played enough where I want to see a little bit better from you. And then I think it's another guy that if he probably adds on a little bit, it would help with more of just the downhill running and getting the couple extra yards that you want. And then that also adds to the durability, I think, with all those kind of negatives there. But I think he shows a lot of upside, and I think all the Cal guys did a smart job of getting out of there and going to better situations. So I'm hoping to see some improvement this year and him have a shot to go early day 2.
I'm interested to see. So I think he reminds me a lot of Rachaad White. He reminds me a lot of Rachaad White, like as a prospect, like, and just as a play style guy. Like he really reminds me a ton of him in terms of what he can do out there. Because I do think he's an elite pass catcher, like an elite guy that can actually add that to your frame there. And yeah, he could be really good. And Oklahoma's going to run. I mean, him and John Mateer are going to be there. Like he's going to get a ton of usage on that way. Christian, where do you want to go?
I'll talk about Makhi Hughes, I guess. He would be my next up after the 5 that we talked about. But he's another one where it's like, okay, he listed at 210. We'll see if that's the case. I don't think he's 210.
We ain't going to see it, Oregon, buddy. Oregon doesn't list their weights, right?
That's true. That's so true. We're not going to see it till the combine. But
if I see 210, I think he's 180.
Right. No, but I think he's a good player. I think he's got some of the best vision in the class, in my opinion. I think he really was productive last year for Tulane. Sorry. Crazy storm. Thunder just scared the shit out of me. It was literally right above me. Where I see an okay receiving skill set. I don't see something that, will be translating to a 3-down role, especially if he's under 210. And I think he's like good, not great at a lot of things too. I think he's got a lot of burst. I think there's a lot of upside there, and being in this Oregon offense is certainly going to help him. I've seen him mocked in the first round. I think that's insane. I see more of a day 3 back than a round 1 back. But he's a good player that I think could be a nice little riser as this Oregon offense gets their feet under them. Hopefully Dante Moore starts.
He's an aggressive back. Is the best way I could. Finishes every play, does a great job of falling forward, turning 2 to 6, 3 to 8, and sometimes that's all it takes. He has good speed enough to make those. If you turn it from 4, it can go to 80 because he made a good enough play and ran through enough. I really like that aspect of his game, and like you said, besides that though, there's some things to flesh out.
Yeah, when I watched him. just a very interesting back to watch. Like I do think he's got to put some weight on, but pretty good against in between the tackles. I like what he was able to do there. Like he makes a lot of guys miss on that first tackle. First step is really good. Like there's a lot of things you liked there. I think Noah Whittington is there at Oregon, and I think he's going to get a little bit of run too there. So like it'll be interesting what the 1A 1B looks like, especially from a pass catching side. I think that's Whittington's role. So it'll be kind of interesting there. But Oregon, they produce running backs, and we've seen that NFL draft stuff. So I do think that's a guy to note. Yeah, 100%. Just a couple games he played against some elite competition at Tulane, he struggled a little bit. So Big Ten competition is the thing. It's like, all right, what's that Big Ten competition going to look like? I'll go over to Trey Wisner. Texas running back, I do think that they're loaded at the running back spot with what they've got there. But last year he stepped in, him and Jaydn Blue. And I mean, honestly, Trey was better. I think when you're looking at just the raw numbers and what he was able to put out there, 226 carries, 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns. He also caught 44 balls for 311 yards and a touchdown. I think people forget that. I think from a receiving standpoint, and the coaching staff trusted him much more than Jaydn Blue. Blue fumbled too much, and so that's why Wisner was out there. 6 foot 200, probably 210 now. I looked at Texas's depth chart there, so you do like the size. You think that, hey, if you can get the 210, 215, you'd be happy with that. Had a pretty good down the stretch game. I thought one of his best games was against Clemson in the playoff, where he had 15 carries, 110 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So he's a guy I think you should know out there. Just being a solid running back. Just from when you're watching. It is interesting to see what happens with CJ Baxter, if he comes back or how that looks. I still don't think Baxter gonna be ready for week 1 against Ohio State, but you'll get to watch him against Ohio State first week, and you'll be able to see what he can do out there. Some other guys, Bryson Washington's on this list. Some other guys we didn't mention that we probably could have too. Katron Allen, Penn State running back. I know there's some Katron Allen truthers. There's one guy on YouTube that always yells at us because we don't talk about Katron Allen. And I'll let you know. He's there. He's a very solid back. I think, from that standpoint, he's behind Singleton. He's out there as well. So I just wanted to point him out. Just so people know. Justice Haynes, I don't know, we didn't get into him too much. We talked about it a little bit in our group chat. Definitely got to bounce back this year at Michigan, so we'll see kind of what that's going to look like for Justice Haynes. Ruben Owens is out there. If you guys don't remember, Ruben Owens was a hot 5-star kid. It goes to Texas A&M with Le'Veon Moss is there. So, there's a lot of guys in that range in this area here. Any final thoughts on these guys, Christian?
I was just going to say one more name just to keep an eye on, because he's going to run 4.3s if he does declare. Dylan Edwards, former Colorado player, transferred to Kansas State. Super small kid, but every time when I was watching him, I was like, man, this might be H-Hand too. We might just, the speed might be so dominant that a team can make it work. It would be pretty sick if he declared and went to the Dolphins, even though I love Jalen Wright, who's also fast. But I think it's going to take a special offensive coordinator to make it work, because he's listed, I believe, 5'9", 167 or something like that. So that could be problematic. And I don't typically like backs like that, but 4.3 might be high. He might get.
He could get the 4.2s.
Yeah, he's lightning fast. So teams love speed. I think that offers an opportunity for him to be a day 2 pick if he declares.
No, he's that kid. I just talked about it. I went on the Fantasy Points podcast, and Josh was asking me, he goes, what do you think of Dylan Edwards? I'm like, hey, you know what? He's got some NFL upside, because he is one thing that teams are going to love. Fast as hell. That kid he can scoot. But if he gets caught by a middle linebacker, he might die. So that's also the flip side, because he's definitely a small boy when you're watching him there. But he can definitely he can put on some weight. He's got the frame to do it. He's not a small frame guy. He's a big frame guy there. Randy, any final thoughts? Any of these guys, or any final thoughts on the running back class?
Just a lot to figure out with the class. I think we have 2 or 3 guys that we know are early day 2, can get into day 1, depending on just how the season goes. And then we got a dozen people that are just in that huge range of they're going to be day 2 to undrafted, and we just need so much more fleshed out. But I think we could end up with a strong top-heavy class at the end of this.
Mm-hmm. I think that, I think it could be deep. I don't know how many. I don't want to know how many game changers we have. It's weird, because we got kind of spoiled with this last class. What we think we got spoiled with it. We'll see how it pans out in the NFL. That's always a question mark. But this class, it reminds me more probably of the Miles Sanders group. I think that's probably the Josh Jacobs, right? He was in my group, Miles Sanders, those guys.
I believe so.
Yeah.
That's kind of like where I'm at with these guys. That's kind of where I'm at with this class as a whole. All right. Well, that's our running back summer scouting. We got into this. We'll obviously get in deeper as we go. Next week, another group of guys with a lot of question marks. Forgot wide receivers. I've been watching some, and it's we'll get into it. We'll see how it goes. This is why the 26 class is an interesting class, because there's a lot of question marks out there. I'll be honest, like I bet you we all have a different wide receiver one, if not different top 5 wide receivers throughout, because it is.
I'm not sure I have a receiver one. Right
Yeah,
now.
it's pretty deep, and I've said it before. I don't know how many I have as a round 1 grade. I don't have any right now, actually. So we'll see how it goes. The question will be, how high is Makhi limit for Christian? How high does he go? That is the question as we get into it. So if you listen on the podcast, leave us a review. We appreciate it. Give us that 5-star review if you can. If you're on YouTube, drop a comment. We love chatting up with you guys in terms of if you're respectful about our rankings here. What are some running backs you like or don't like, right? And then my Katron Allen truther. What do you think? Where you have him in your top 5? Give me your list down there so I can see it. All right. Appreciate you guys. We'll check you guys next week.